friends, welcome to this daily video devotional. I am excited to share with you about grace this morning, or this afternoon, the evening, whenever it is you're watching this. I'm going to read from the book of James' letter to the churches. And it's going to start in chapter 2, verse 14. And this is titled in my Bible, Showing Faith. He says this, "My brothers and sisters, what good is it if people say they have faith, but do nothing to show it? Imagine a brother or sister who is naked and never has enough food to eat. What if one of you said, 'Go in peace, stay warm, have a nice meal'? What good is it if you don't actually give them what their body needs? In the same way, faith is dead when it doesn't result in faithful activity." In the same way, faith is dead if it doesn't result in faithful activity. Now, I said we're going to talk about grace. That didn't mention grace, but it did in a very big way, and I'll show you how. So, as United Methodists, we believe that there is nothing we can do to earn God's grace. No action, no activity, no good deed that we could do to earn God's grace. Similarly, there's nothing that we could do to lose God's grace. I don't know which one we have a harder time buying into, honestly. I think we live in such a do and be rewarded society and culture and world that we just don't know what to do with a message that tells us that we are loved and given grace freely, abundantly, and there's nothing that we can do to make that happen. It just happens. Sometimes we read James's letter and we start going, wait a second. He's saying that faith is dead if we don't have activity to show our faithfulness. Something doesn't seem like it's matching up. But notice what James isn't saying is that our activity, our good, faithful activity, is what earns us grace. He says that faithful activity, actions that are faithful, that demonstrate our faithfulness, are the result of our faith. Otherwise, that faith is kind of dead. I often refer to this as nominal Christianity. And I'm not the only one. Nominal meaning in name only. To say that I'm a Christian and then have nothing to show for that other than maybe going to church on Sundays or putting a fish sticker on my car. That faith really means not a whole lot. I'll often talk with families that try to describe a loved one's faith, and they'll say, well, you know, they were very private about their faith. They weren't real open about it, but they were faithful. And I knew what they were trying to say. They were trying to explain away why they weren't involved in church, and I often would tell families, that's okay. I'm not worried about that. Because that's not what makes you a Christian. What makes you a Christian is not how often you go to church and that your attendance box is checked. What makes you a Christian is how you love your neighbors, love yourself, and love God. Is worship an important part of that? You bet. It absolutely is an important part of that. Because it's how we worship God, and that's how we get fulfilled by God's grace is through worship. What we receive and what we do in that moment is what's important, not the action itself. When we give food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, shelter to the homeless, clothing to the naked, when we visit the prisoner and give hope to the hopeless, that's what Christianity looks like. That's what faith that is alive looks like. So I often describe grace as this. If grace were part of a CSI show, crime scene investigators, would they find evidence? If they were to look deeply in your life, would they discover blatantly obvious evidence of your faith? Or would that be a bit of a struggle? Now, that's not to say that because you don't have much evidence of your faith that somehow you lose grace. Remember, that's not how it works. But God's grace should compel us. Should compel us to show evidence and produce evidence of that faithfulness. That's what changes the world. That's how we are God's hands and feet in this world. That's how we live into thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as in heaven. And so let your faith become evident in what you do, how you love, how you care, how you serve. Everything else, it's nominal. Amen.